it ahead. Harper gets it down. And Mason gives the Knicks a 5-point lead.
Well, the Knicks have been releasing on long jump shots throughout this whole series. They've got about 3 field goals on it tonight, and maybe none bigger than that one.
Anthony Mason was one of my favorite Knicks of all time. A ferocious competitor, the rare combination of size and agility. He was the heart, the soul, and the style of the 90s Knicks. As a young Knicks fan who grew up with this team, you only saw the end product of a player, but you missed the whole journey. So I went back, did my research, and what you will find out will truly inspire you. This is the story of Mace. Let's start from the beginning. As a junior in high school, Mace moved to the southeastern section of Queens in the early 80s. It was home to thousands of working class and middle class African American families. As drug trafficking increased across New York City, the area was hit particularly hard. The culprit? Crack cocaine. As the crack era begun, Queens was beginning to see a dark side as families became destroyed and drug-related homicides rose exponentially. Notorious drug dealers like Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols and Supreme Team were running the streets. Now, Mace could have easily fallen victim to the epidemic and become a gangster, but his mother, Mary Mason, was not having it. Mace's only 2 options living in the hood was basketball and the books. Now, Mace was a late bloomer to the game, having only started playing organized ball as a junior at Springfield Gardens High School. He would often break into the school gym at nighttime to practice his jump shooting. In 1983, he led his school to win the city PSAL championship. Mace reluctantly played the 6-man role despite being one of the best players on the team. Also playing in the tournament were famous New Yorkers Mark Jackson of Bishop Loughlin in Brooklyn, Kenny the Jet Smith, who went to Archbishop Malloy, and the legendary Pearl Washington of Boys and Girls in Brooklyn. In those days, New York City was filled with talent. But Mason never garnered the same amount of attention that those guys did, despite having a great senior year and a city championship under his belt. No Division I schools recruited him, and he would end up attending Tennessee State University. He was a fish out of water and homesick, but it was at TSU where Mace began to own his skills and build muscle. In his senior year, Mace averaged 28 points per game and finished among the leaders in the country in 3-point shooting. Mace would go on to become the first player at his school to be named to the Ohio Valley Conference first team. Hoping to finally achieve his dream of being an NBA player, Anthony Mason enters into the 1988 NBA draft, but he was taken in the 3rd round by the Portland Trail Blazers. But the Blazers already had a stacked front court, and so they would have to put Anthony Mason on the injured list to start the season. The dream had turned into a nightmare. Now, Mace could have stayed in Portland, but with no guaranteed future for a 3rd round pick, he would ask for his release to take his talents elsewhere. From here, he would begin a 3-year odyssey. Mace joined Efes Pilsen of the Turkish Basketball League. Now, he was making guaranteed money to support his family, but it was too much cultural differences to overcome, so Mace would head for the hills. So Mason calls his old high school coach, frustrated that he couldn't make it, and his coach calls an old friend. Some people know him as Willis Reed, but most Knicks fans know him as the captain. Willis Reed was head coach of the New Jersey Nets at the time and decided to give Mace a shot. Now, Mace played well for 20 games, but Willis Reed would end up getting reassigned to the front office, and with a new coach in town, Mace would end up getting cut by the end of the season. So it was back to the grind. Mace joins the Tulsa Fast Breakers of the Continental Basketball Association, and he played fairly well, even dropping a 47-point, 10-rebound outing against neighboring Oklahoma City. That was enough to earn a phone call from the Denver Nuggets, who gave Mace 2 10-day contracts, but at the end of it, didn't find them worth keeping. So Mace heads down to Venezuela to play for the Marinos de Oriente, and then comes back to Long Island to play in the USBL for the Long Island Surf. In a game between the Surf and the Miami Tropics, many NBA scouts were on hand to watch the talented but troubled Lloyd Sweet Pea Daniels out of East New York. Daniels had joined the Miami team looking for a way back in to the NBA, but he would end up getting outworked by Mace, whose 36 points more than caught the eye of Knicks scout Fuzzy Levine. Fuzzy would end up calling Knicks general manager Ernie Grunfeld and head coach Pat Riley to tell him about this kid. So Mason ends up joining the Knicks Summer League team in June of 1991, and as the legend has it, right in front of Pat Riley's eyes, he grabs a rebound, dribbles the length of the floor, and dunks on a bigger man. It wasn't quite Showtime Lakers, but it was all Pat Riley needed to see to sign him to the main roster. For Mace, after a long, hard journey, spent in many cities, dealing with rejection and being told that he wasn't good enough, it was only right that he would start his career in a place where he belonged. The prodigal son would return home to play for his New York Knicks. But now wasn't the time to rest and be happy. Now was the time to show the league why they had been wrong all along.
Lakers lead by 2. Oh, nice pass. Mason for Starks. And the Knicks, he has hurt them in the past. Again, Mason around Divac. So the Knicks, Mason given the room. Worthy showing little respect for the outside shot. So again, Mason goes around his man.
Well, tonight, and after he demonstrated the touch, he could fake the jump shot, and it drove around Divac again, finishing with a slam dunk and doing his Michael Jordan imitation.
With his unique abilities and blue-collar attitude, Anthony Mason quickly became a fan favorite. The cult of Mace would also be personified by his intricate haircuts, where he'd always have a message for his opponents. Mace was the lightning rod of the 90s Knicks, and as a sixth man, he led his team to the 93-94 NBA Finals, beating the rival Pacers in 7 hard-fought games. No matter offense or defense, Mace did anything he had to do to give his team a lift.
The rebounding of this team, at one point I think he had 28 offensive rebounds as a team.
Well, we got to do whatever it takes. We like to do it the ugly way. You know, that's what we know that for. And it's going after offensive rebound, diving for loose balls, and we're going to have to do it. And that's what's going to carry us.
All of the sacrifice and dedication had paid off for Mace. Now he just wanted to win a championship in front of his family. But the Knicks would have to get past that red-hot Houston Rockets team in the NBA Finals. With the series tied at 2 apiece, Mason would prove to be the catalyst in the Knicks' Game 5 victory over the Rockets, scoring 17 points and 9 rebounds off the bench in the clutch. Now, as we know, the Knicks would go on to lose in 7 games, but what often goes overlooked in this series was that Mason had to guard Houston's Hakeem Olajuwon on the defensive end, almost giving up 5 inches to one of the greatest centers of all time. Mace battled him to the end, a lot of times forcing Olajuwon into turnaround jumpers because he couldn't back Mason down.
Whoa! Anthony.
The 94-95 season was another career year for Anthony Mason. Coming off the bench, Mace averaged 9.9 points per game, 8.4 rebounds a game, and 3 assists, leading the Knicks in field goal percentage at 56%. Mason would help lead the Knicks to a 55-24 record, good for second in the Atlantic Division. For his efforts in being a spark off the bench for the Knicks, Mace would go on to win the NBA Six-Man Award, beating out Del Curry and Chuck Person.
The NBA Six-Man Award, 94-95, goes to Anthony Mason.
So the Knicks would once again face off against the rival Pacers in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and Mace would do his best to chip in, including a 13-point fourth quarter to help the Knicks win Game 5. They would go on to lose the series in Game 7. But Mason's New York homecoming would ultimately end after a series of off-the-court incidents twice being suspended by the team for conduct detrimental to the team, and a clash with Patrick Ewing over the direction of the offense, Mason was ultimately traded to the Charlotte Hornets, where he would spend 3 seasons averaging 13 points per game and 10 rebounds.
Glenn Robinson in the first half with 15. Mace got through for the bucket. How about that? 10 points for Anthony Mason, and Miami leads by.
By the 2000 season, Anthony Mason would end up being traded to the Miami Heat, reuniting with former coach Pat Riley. He was once thought to be a throw-in in the trade, but once Alonzo Mourning went down with a kidney ailment, Mason's role became much, much greater. He once again rose to the challenge, leading his team in minutes with 40 per game and averaging 16 points per game and 9.6 rebounds. Not only did Mason earn the respect of his teammates, but he would also earn the respect of the league by being named to his first All-Star team at the age of 34, becoming the second oldest player to do so after Nat Sweetwater Clifton. To cap off a magical season, Anthony Mason was named to the All-NBA third team, joining Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway, Vin Baker, and John Stockton, thus being named one of the 15 best players in the league during that year, an honor that very few NBA players receive. Mason would end up playing 2 more years for the Milwaukee Bucks, and by the time his career was over, the kid from Queens who was always told no, who was always told he wasn't good enough, and who was always rejected, had racked up quite a resume. 6th Man of the Year, All-Star, All-NBA team, and yeah, he could have been a champion, but it wasn't meant to be. On February 28, 2015, Anthony Mason passed away at the young age of 48. The basketball world joined Knicks fans around the world in mourning. His toughness and his grit left an indelible mark on the younger generation. He was honored by the NBA Commissioner's Office, who paid tribute to his perseverance in fighting for a chance in the NBA. For me, the lesson that I learned from Anthony Mason is to find what you're good at, work hard at it, stay on the grind, and never give up until you put your every last ounce of energy into it. I had the honor of meeting him a few months before he passed away, and it was an honor to tell him, thanks for the memories. Rest in peace, Mace.
Can you talk a little bit about the impact of the crowd in the last 3, 4, 5 minutes of the game?
I can tell you about the impact of the crowd, overall, period. They've been great, loud, supporting us. They've been there for us. They're our 6th man, and we appreciate them. Like they're part of the team. They need to put on some Knicks uniforms also.
Anthony, has it sunk in yet that you guys